And that's good, because we had a great day yesterday and the day before on your selection. With that said, I will call this meeting to order. Mike, I'll call on you for a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Larry Suker, Chairman.
Here.
Kellen Lancaster, Vice Chairman.
Here.
Mike Purcell, Secretary. Here. Gerald Geis.
Here.
Clinton Glick.
Excused.
Ron Cayley, Jr.
Here.
Mark Cott.
Here.
Sheridan Little.
Here.
Rod Wagner.
Here.
Bill Yankee.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mike. We'll proceed with the recognition of members present to establish a quorum. If we could start on one end, we'll go to Sheridan with that.
Sheridan Little, Wyoming Water Development Commission, Water Division 2.
Marcotte, Water Division 4.
Bill Yankee, Wyoming Water Development Commission, Division 3.
Mike Purcell, Member at Large.
Gerald Geis, District 3.
Larry Suker, District 2.
Kellen Lancaster, Water Development Commission, District 4, Western Wyoming.
Rod Wagner, Wyoming Water Development Commissioner, District 1, up in Goshen County.
Ron Cayley, Water Development Commissioner, District 1.
Thank you. With that, Ron, you are new to our board. If you would want to give a little presentation about where you've been or how you got here or whatever, just something short, whatever you feel comfortable with. And I would say welcome to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my journey began in 1979, where I applied at the BOPU Water Department and was hired. And 40 years later, I just retired from the BOPU in July. And for the last 4 years, up till January, I was a county commissioner here in Laramie County. And I've been on about, I don't know, I think 13 or 14 boards, everything from the airport board to the library board. And a couple of my Republican friends had called the governor and asked for me to be looked at for this board. And they gave me a call, and I put my name in the hat. So thank you for welcoming me, and I look forward to some great times.
Thank you, Ron. Looks like you have some experience. You're going to help the board tremendously. I can tell that. Thank you. And welcome again. Now we'll just continue to do audience introductions. If we could, we'll start with Jason.
Jason Mead, Water Development Office. Andrew.
Andrew Coleman, Wyoming Attorney General's Office.
Katie Talbot, Water Development Office.
Jody Pring, Water Development Office. Water Development Office.
Kevin Boyce, Water Development Office.
John Harbarter, Steve Douglas. Ben Jordan with Weston Engineering.
Marissa Selvig, Town Pavilion. Colleen Ross, Sunrise Engineering.
Tony Rutherford, Water Development Office.
Chase DeBelli, Water Development.
Thank you. We'll go into item number 4, approval of minutes. And these are minutes for the August 14th, 2019 joint workshop. And I believe we can make the same motion for the August 16th, 2019 joint meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move the approval of minutes for the August 14th, 2019 joint workshop and for the August 16th, 2019 joint meeting.
I'll second that.
Made by Mike Purcell, seconded by Gerald Geis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Jason, you have the floor on the planning amendments.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, like you mentioned, we've got a couple of planning amendments. I would invite Kevin Boyce,
project manager for the Douglas test well, to come up and explain this amendment number 1.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Under tab, what are we under tab?
S. T, sorry.
Tab T, you'll find some information there regarding a request for a contract amendment to extend a consultant services contract expiration date for an additional 18 months. Under that, you'll see a memorandum on the first page. And I'll just read through that if you haven't. The Douglas Test Well Level 2 study involves a municipal water supply well siting and drilling program for the city of Douglas, Wyoming, in Converse County. Douglas has current municipal public water source supply from the following. I won't read through that tabulation of their supplies from the North Platte River, from Box Elder Spring, and the Sheep Mountain Well, but you can see that they do have a diverse portfolio of supply sources, and those permits are for municipal drinking water use. They have other appropriations for irrigation for the city. An additional municipal supply well was recommended in the 2010 master plan. The city has since been staging water projects, including the replacement of the 16-mile Little Box Elder pipeline, which was funded under 2011 and 2016 Level 3 appropriations. And they have submitted application for this Level 2 test well program in September of 2016. It's the intent of the Level 2 project to develop a second Paleozoic age aquifer well in association with the existing Sheep Mountain well that was successfully developed in 1990. This study began in July of 2017 with a intensive geohydrologic research and well siting exercise that culminated in a ranked short list of potential locations to drill for the test well. Since then, since that well siting program, we have been seeking adequate access for test drilling at the top ranked sites, and it has become a long process dealing with landowners. And the first site was a Sheep Mountain well number 2 site. It was fairly close to the Sheep Mountain number well in the same structure, the same groundwater compartment, and on the same land owned by the as the Sheep Mountain well location. And this was land owned by the Bed Tick Ranch. However, the process for seeking access with the ranch became lengthy. And then we discovered that the ranch was up for sale. And then we thought maybe the buyer, a potential buyer of the ranch would agree to work with us. And that still could happen. But since then we've moved on to at least another 2 sites on our ranking list. Our consultant, Weston Engineering, who is here today, Ben Jordan's here today, is pressing on with access negotiations at these alternate sites. And I'm confident, the city's confident, that we can acquire access for drilling this well. The agreement that we use presently involves temporary and permanent commitment that assures future acquisition of the well site, plus all those appurtenances needed, like power and transmission line right of way, so that if we have a successful test well, we are covered for all those right of ways and access requirements. You'll see on page the next page, I believe, yes, a letter from the city manager, Jonathan Tykert, dated May 3rd, requesting same. So therefore, the city of Douglas is making this request, and Mr. Tykert's not here today, but John Hargberger is here, and either and/or John or Ben can answer any questions, or myself, that you may have on this extension request. Time extension.
Mr. Chairman? All the wells basically in what we call the Casper Formation?
They are in, Ben, help me, they're in the Paleozoic aquifer, which has been explored along that front of the mountain, of the range there, and it's either one or a combination of the Casper Formation and the Madison Formation.
Thank you. One more follow-up. Is it via the same formation as Sheep Mountain Well 1?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the amendment.
Moved by Commissioner Purcell, seconded by Commissioner Wagner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Again, we will go to item 6, which is closeout memos, and we will ask our acting director, Jason.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this next amendment is just a simple housekeeping amendment. It's for the Salt Creek Edgerton Midwest Water Master Plan Level 1 study. And when we write our contracts, we make sure that the name of the consultant matches the name that has been registered with the Secretary of State's office. And there was a little mix-up on that name from the information we got from the Secretary of State's office. So this amendment just simply fixes that mistake and changes their name to the way it should be. So, like I said, just a housekeeping item.
Need a motion on,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Contract Amendment 1 on Salt Creek Edgerton.
Second.
moved by Commissioner Yankee, seconded by Commissioner Geis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Looks like we're already into planning number 7 here. It looks like our projects. I wanted to say a few words.
Mr. Chairman, we're
Yes.
on number 6 real quick.
Oh, okay, you still have the Sheridan Water Master Plan. Okay, Jason.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have a couple of closeout memos, and Keith Clary, project manager here at our office, was a project manager on both those studies, so he'll handle those for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tab U is the closeout memo for the Green River, Rock Springs, Sweetwater County Joint Powers Water Board Pump Station and Transmission Level 2 Study. The sponsor was the Joint Powers Water Board. The appropriation was from the 2018 session for $180,000. The consultant selected was Sunrise Engineering Incorporated. The original contract amount was $171,467. The final contract amount was $171,466.50, with a balance savings of 50 cents. In 2017, the Joint Powers Water Board requested a Level 2 study to investigate providing a supplemental and pumping redundant pump capacity out of their water treatment plant in Green River. The existing water treatment plant pump station is a single point of failure for the system. If that pump station goes down for any length of time, the entire system doesn't have finished water to Green River and Rock Springs and other users. So this second study was critical to look at replacing and or adding capacity to this first pump station, which was the original design. So the study showed that A new pump station construction and site improvements would have an estimated cost of $23,645,000 in 2018 dollars. The need for a redundant pump station is present today in the system. However, the funding of the project will determine the timing of the project. There was a public hearing on August 28th this year in water treatment plant at Green River. And from that, the Joint Powers Water Board evaluated the cost of the $23+ million. And the Joint Powers Water Board has decided not to apply for a WWDC Level 3 construction project at this time, but they intend to apply sometime in the future. The Water Development Office recommends proceeding to the next level of project development upon submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor. And the proposed WWDC motion is listed below on that page.
Chairman,
Yes.
look at the motion. Would you explain item number 3 to me? The public functions and service cannot realistically be provided by any person, association, or corporation engaged in private enterprise?
That's a legal requirement that we have to have on these level 2 studies to show that nobody else, no private entity or some other corporation or whatever would provide those kind of services. So it's something in the statutory.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. When we went through our legislative audit, that was pointed out that we need to be following and making sure that there were no private entities or anybody else that could provide the same services that we were providing.
I'll be quiet now.
No, you won't.
Anything else with this amendment?
Any questions?
So Keith,
We
Yes.
approve the amendment.
There's question.
so Keith, did the Joint Powers Board panic when they saw the price of that new pump station? And is that why they're all of a sudden backpedaling?
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't there at the time when the cost of the project was presented to them. And I think right now they've got a lot of work going on currently, and they want to not have to take on some more debt and then have to raise water rates. So they're trying to, right now, finish some other projects and service off some debt they've got so they can take on more debt. So I'm not sure when they will come in for the new pump station, but that's my understanding with it.
Right now, we do not have to take, this is not a motion. It is, okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's a motion just to accept the study. It's not a motion. They're not
Okay.
coming in for the 23 million plus at this point. But we will stay in close contact with them because obviously we spoke about budget last meeting. And for instance, I think we have rough numbers, 56 million for the next 2 years out of account 1, which is where this would probably come from. Yeah, new pump station. So that would eat up basically a whole year's worth of account 1 money almost. So it's going to need to be thought about, and it's a mini Gillette kind of deal where you'd have to phase it out and get creative on how to fund it so you're not putting everybody else out. So, but we're not moving forward at this point, or this Joint Powers Board's not moving forward at this point. So we would ask for your favorable consideration of the motion.
Citizens of Green River Rock Springs, Sweetwater County Joint Power Water Pump Station and Transmission Level 2 Study Project report is being complete and further WWDC makes the following finding relative to this project.
Second.
Number 2, based on the findings in the final report, the project is determined to be in the public interest. Number 3, the project functions and services cannot realistically be provided by any person, associated, corporation engaged in private enterprise. Amen.
It's been moved by Commissioner Geis, second by Commissioner Kaylee. All those, is there any discussion on this? Any additional discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, based on the weather outside, we're apparently all in a fog this morning. This is the closeout memo for the Sheridan Water Master Plan Level 1 study. The sponsor was the City of Sheridan. This was an authorization for an appropriation was in 2018 session for a total of $250,000. The contract went to Dowell and LLC. The original contract amount was $247,500. The final contract amount was $247,245.10. The contract balance was $254.90. In 2017, the City of Sheridan applied for a master plan and with the support of the Sheridan Area Water Supply Joint Powers Board. The master plan was conducted over 2017 to 2018 into 2019, 2018 and 2019, and they recommended the following improvements. Airport transmission main is the highest priority coming out of the master plan. The existing ductile iron pipe is in a deteriorating condition and needs to be replaced. This is a critical need for water supply main for the city and the Sheridan Area Water Water Supply Board. The total cost for the airport transmission main replacement is approximately $4,494,000, and that's it was decided between Sheridan and the Sheridan Area Water Supply Joint Powers Board that the Sheridan Area Water Supply would take the lead on this project being supported by the City of Sheridan, which is a reversal of the roles from their master plan. The other recommendations are the intake facilities, the Big Goose Water Treatment Plant, metering, storage, and other transmission mains that need to be installed or replaced. And then also proceeding with a level 2 study to look at any additional future water supplies. The public report presentation occurred on April 17th in Sheridan. The final report and executive summaries on both these closeout projects are available online at our website. And the total estimated project cost for this proposed level 3 construction projects is approximately $4,640,000, including inflation factor of 3%, including $134,815. And the Water Development Office is currently preparing a recommendation for this 2020 level 3 construction project. And the proposed motion is shown down below. And so I'll take any questions.
Questions by the board? If not, thank you, Keith, for your report, and we'll vote on this. Someone want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the proposed motion.
Moved by Sheridan Little.
Second.
Seconded by Gerald Geis. Any other discussion with this? So if not, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, now a new realm here. We'll go into item 7. That's our 2020 planning projects, consultant selection approval. I want to say on behalf of the board of directors, we want to thank the engineers that put so much time and effort into these proposals. What I've seen of them, they were professionally, very professionally done. And I just think they done a great job. In the last 2 days, went pretty smooth. And I want to also compliment the personnel right here that worked with that. All the people that helped put it on, including including the one that brought the water to us and the ice and kept us surviving the last 2 days with that. I think it was a smooth transition and went well, and I just want to say that we got a lot of proposals. Appreciate that fact. Had a lot of competition, and I hope we made the right decisions. With that, we will go to item 7 on our planning projects.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo the sentiments. Thanks to everyone, especially a special thanks to our staff for all their work to get us and tee these up for us. Today marks the culmination of the 2020 consultant selection process. And just so you know, this is the second time, our second go-around under the new process, okay? So just to refresh your memory a little bit, we started way back with applications due March 1st. We had project managers writing recommendations and holding site visits on those projects. And then back in May, at your May commission meeting, all those projects came before you, and then you gave preliminary approval to start consultant selection on those projects. We then began solicitation for statements of interest, statements of qualification by consultants. That ran for about a month. They were due June 25th in our office. Project managers did the shortlisting. They also did the residency certification process, which is new this year. RFPs went out to these consultants, the shortlisted consultants, on July 23rd. And again, our project managers many times held site visits for the consultants and so forth. Proposals, they had basically 1 month to put those proposals to our office. They were due August 23rd. And then we got into distributing those proposals, and obviously most of you were involved with ranking those proposals and so forth, submitting your comments or your rankings to Katie, and those were all put together from the various teams, and then that culminated in the last 2 days of interviews. The top 3 firms got interviews. So quite a process we've been through, and as I say, today is kind of the culmination. Based on the recommendations that you will make, the motions, the dollar amounts for those projects, appropriations, will then be hardwired into the omnibus water planning bill. And that was the purpose of doing that, so we know going into the legislation what the consultant selection would bear and what the prices were. So that would be hardwired in. So with that, I think we're ready to entertain motions.
Thank you, Barry.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, could I ask a question?
Yes.
With this new process, let's say you could not successfully negotiate a contract in March. What happens? You can go to number 2?
Mr. Chairman, the motions that you will be making, there's a reason we explained this yesterday in our briefings that, yes, that you would go to number 2 and so forth. Obviously, the dollar amounts would be hardwired in based on what was selected for the number 1 consultant, but hopefully you could ink a deal with the number 2, and we set that up in the motions just so that we could do that.
My motion doesn't say anything about that.
There should be a ranking, Mr. Chairman, of firms.
Start off with the ranking.
Mm-hmm. Should be a ranking of firms, begin negotiations in the following ranking of firms. Yeah.
Any other questions the board has?
The price is hardwired, so it might be difficult to come up with that second negotiation.
That's correct, mister.
Thank you.
Any other questions on our new transition here that the board has? If not, we'll proceed into Bridger Valley Regional Water Master Plan.
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the Bridger Valley Regional Water Master Plan Level 1 study ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Number 1, Sunrise Engineering. Number 2, Forsgren Associates. Number 3, Western Engineers and Geologists. I move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Sunrise Engineering, Inc. for consulting services on the Bridger Valley Regional Water Master Plan Level 1 study with a recommended appropriation of $100,000.
Been moved by Commissioner Little. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Pretty quick on 2 here, so we'll use you, Gerald. Been seconded by Commissioner Geis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item of business was Cody Water Master Plan.
Mr. Chairman, Select Committee to Cody Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Engineers Associate, Morrison and Y2 Consultants. I move the director to instruct to begin contract negotiations with Engineer Associates for consulting service on the Cody Water Master Plan Level 1 project with recommendations appropriations of $205,000.
This has been moved by Commissioner Geis,
Second.
too quick again, but I'm gonna, I think, we had two of them here. I think Purcell, would you
No,
second?
It was
Mr.
Commissioner
Yonke? Seconded by Commissioner Yonke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Go to item 3, Happy Valley Water Supply.
The selection committee for the Happy Valley Water Supply Level 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. 1, Sunrise Engineering. 2, Forsgren Associates. And 3, Y2 Consultants. I, Mike Purcell, move the director be instructed to begin negotiations with Sunrise Engineering for consultant services on the Happy Valley Water Supply Level 2 project with a recommended appropriation of $59,000.
Second it.
Moved by Commissioner Purcell, seconded by Kellen Lancaster. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Next, we have the Highland Hanover Irrigation District Pump Station.
Mr. Chairman, the Select Committee for Highland Hanover Pump Station Level 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Western Heritage Consultant Engineering. Number 2, Iberg Miller Engineers. Number 3, Engineering Associates. I, Gerald Geis, move the director to instruct to begin contract negotiations with Western Heritage Consulting and Engineering for consulting service on the Highland Hanover Pump Station Level 2 project with recommendations appropriations of $75,000.
Been moved by Commissioner Geis,
Second.
second by Commissioner Little. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item is LaGrange Water Master Plan.
Mr. Chairman, the selection committee for the LaGrange Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. 1, AVI. 2, Sunrise Engineering. And 3, Short, Elliott, and Hendrickson. I, Mike Purcell, move the director to be instructed to begin negotiations with AVI for consulting services on the LaGrange Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $114,000.
This has been moved by Commissioner Purcell. Seconded by Commissioner Wagner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Lower Shoshone Watershed Study. Is our next item.
Mr. Chairman, Selection Committee, I, Bill Yankee, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Biota Research and Consulting for consulting services on the Lower Shoshone Watershed Study Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $231,000.
It's been moved by Commissioner Yankee. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Geis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Owl Creek Irrigation District, Lucerne Master Plan.
Mr. Chairman, the Selection Committee for the Owl Creek Irrigation District Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Anderson Consulting Engineers Incorporated, Western Heritage Consulting and Engineering LLC, JUB Engineers Incorporated. I, Bill Yankee, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Anderson Consulting Engineers Incorporated for consulting services on the Owl Creek Irrigation District Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $170,000.
This has been moved by Commissioner Yankee. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Geis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Pavilion Water Master Plan.
Mr. Chairman, I obviously requested that all three of my motions be grouped together so I wouldn't lose track of the proceedings, but the Selection Committee for the Pavilion Water Master Plan Level 1 study ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Number 1 is Dow LLC. Number 2, HDR Engineering Incorporated. Number 3, James Gores and Associates Incorporated. I, Bill Yankee, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Dow LLC for consulting services on the Pavilion Water Master Plan Level 1 study with a recommended appropriation of $135,000. Further, the Selection Committee offers the following suggestions to the director during contract negotiations. Number 1, accept the no-cost scope alternatives as listed in the proposal. Number 2, scope alternative number 1 for $7,000 for video logging of either well number 1 or well number 8 to be determined.
This has been moved by Commissioner Yankee. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Gerald Geis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Pinedale Water Master Plan is our next item of business.
Mr. Chairman, the Selection Committee for the Pinedale Water Master Plan Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. 1, Forsgren Associates. 2, Jorgensen Associates. And 3, William H. Smith and Associates. I, Mike Purcell, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiation with Forsgren Associates for consulting services on the Pinedale Water Master Plan Level 1 project with a recommended appropriation of $172,000. Further, the Selection Committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the contract negotiations. Increase the consultant budget by $5,000 for Task 7, alternate source supply and treatment analysis. This increase is accounted for in the aforementioned $172,000.
This motion has been made by Commissioner Purcell. Do I hear a second?
I second. Second, copped,
Got 2 seconds going here. I think
whatever.
we'll take Commissioner Lancaster. He was first, maybe. So with that, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Shoshone Water Master Plan is our next item of business.
Selection Committee for the Shoshone Water Master Plan Level 1 study ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. James Gore and Associates Incorporated, William H. Smith with Scope 3 Alternative, and HDR Engineering Incorporated. I, Rod Wagner, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with James Gore and Associates Incorporated for consulting services on the Shoshone Water Master Plan Level 1 study with a recommended appropriation of $157,000.
This motion has been made by Commissioner Wagner,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Geis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item of business is Skyline Improvement and Service District Water Supply.
Mr. Chairman, the Selection Committee for the Skyline Ranch Water Supply Level 2 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Nelson Engineering, number 1. Number 2, Rendezvous Engineering. And number 3, Jorgensen Associates. I, Kellen Lancaster, move the director to be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Nelson Engineering for the consulting services on the Skyline Ranch Water Supply Level 2 project with a recommended appropriation of $93,000. Further, the selection committee offers the following suggestions to the director during the contract negotiations. The recommended appropriation and subsequent consultant contract shall include the base price proposal plus the scope alternate, which is water service line locating and a GPS survey in the proposed price.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lancaster. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Yankee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item of business is South End Water Users Improvement in Service District Transmission.
Mr. Chairman, the Selection Committee for the South End Water Users Improvement and Service District Transmission Project Level 2 Study ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. 1. Prior Mountain Engineering. 2. Morrison Merrily. I move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Prior Mountain Engineering Incorporated for consulting services on the South End Water Users Improvement and Service District Transmission Project Level 2 Study with a recommended appropriation of $142,000.
Moved by Commissioner Little, seconded by Commissioner Wagner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Upper Wind River in-stream flows.
Selection Committee for the Upper Wind River in-stream flow for 2019 Level 1 project ranks the consulting firms interviewed in the following order. Biota Research and Consulting Incorporated, Western Engineers and Geologic Incorporated. I, Rod Wagner, move the director be instructed to begin contract negotiations with Biota Research and Consulting Incorporated for consulting services on the Upper Wind River in-stream flow for 2019 Level 1 project with a recommended budget of $64,400 to be paid by the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission.
Been moved by Commissioner Wagner. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Cayley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. That concludes our planning projects for the year. There again, I want to still go back and say thank you to all the firms that delivered proposals to the commission. Also want to thank the staff. Great jobs. I think it went smooth, and again, thank you. I hope this all works out and we can build these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence.
We thank the commissioners for their involvement. Appreciate that.
Okay, we will go into item number 8. Before we do, I think we're going to be no later than 11 o'clock from what I can tell we have on the agenda, just so everybody has an idea, I guess. I think we can be out of here within another half an hour, 45 minutes. You agree with that? Okay. So with that, we will, and I know some of us got a long way to travel, some of us, but, so we'll make it work, other than Purcell and maybe one down on the end of the table. But,
We could just leave him to finish up.
yeah, we'll just leave them to finish if we don't get done. But anyway, we'll go into item number 8, construction progress reports, and with that,
Is that under W?
Mr. Chairman, under tab W of the notebook, we have 10 construction progress reports to present to the commission. We have 5 projects that have advanced the design phase. 4 projects have advanced the construction phase. We had 1 project closeout. So the first construction report in the notebook is the Cokeville Tri-Diversion Structure. This is a rehabilitation of the Cokeville Tri-Diversion Structure. This project, again, is advanced to the engineering phase. We had a contract executed for the amount of $72,790. The next project in your notebook is the Dry Creek Irrigation District Rehabilitation 2019 project, and this is to replace steel irrigation pipelines due to corrosion. This project is signed an engineering agreement for $227,400. The next project is the Lower Millwood Rural Water Supply Project. This is a project to design and construct a transmission pipeline as well as a water well and disinfection facility. If you recall, back in March, for those of the commissioners that were here at the March meeting, Director Labonte had presented a letter to the commission indicating this was a letter that he had sent to the district, talking about some of the issues associated with this project. In this particular project, the Sage Engineering was the engineer, and they terminated their agreement with the sponsor. The sponsor questioned their competency, and they decided it was probably best to part ways. So that's why you see the Sage Engineering agreement, the first one listed. So subsequent to Sage terminating their agreement, the Lower Millwood District has entered into an agreement with Eagle Engineering, and that contract amount is for $143,287. The next project is a Rolling Hills Well Number 7 Connection 2019 project. This project also has entered the design phase. There's a total contract amount of $57,526. The next project is the Wheatland Irrigation District Tunnel Dam Rehabilitation 2019 project. This is the rehabilitation of a concrete dam face outlet works in dam embankment. This is a project that was funded with the 2019 legislature. This was design-only funding. So this project you'll see before you in the November Commission meeting for construction funding. This is about a $5 million construction request that you'll see. So again, this project advanced to the engineering contract phase. They signed a contract for $370,710. The next project in your notebook is the Deaver Irrigation District Rehabilitation 2019 project. This is a materials-only project. The construction, and this is a construction phase, so this project, the contract amount is for $226,227.54. And you can see they had a bid opening on August 15th. There were 3 bidders, and the bids range from the low of $236,000 to $268,000. The next project is Eden Valley Farson Lateral Rehabilitation Project. This is the irrigation system improvements for the district. This project is advanced to the construction phase, and we had a bid opening on August 8th. We had 6 bids were received. The range of bids was $3.8 million to $6.6 million. The contract was awarded to the low bid for $3.845 million. The next project is the Glen Rock Transmission Pipeline 2018 project. This project is to provide approximately 2,300 feet of 12-inch transmission line on the north portion of Glen Rock. This project advanced to the construction phase. We had a bid opening on April 9th of this year. We had 3 bids received. The range of bids were from between $428,000 and $591,000. The contract, the low bidder was awarded, was for $427,942. The next project is the Lusk Water System Improvements 2018 project. This is to construct a new well, plug an existing well, and construct some pipelines. This project is advanced to the construction phase. We had a bid opening on April 9th. 2 bids were received. The bids were between $289,000 and $691,000, with a low bid award of $289,122. And the last project to report on is a project closeout. This is for the Sheridan Leopard Street Pipeline Project. This was a design and construction of a 12-inch transmission pipeline through town. This project, the final project cost was a little over $3 million. WWDC funding share was for $2,051,563.90. The other funding sources came in at $1,110,471.78. We're reverting back $159,436.10 back into account 2. And that concludes level 3 construction reports.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any questions for Brian on any of these projects?
Mr. Chairman, it seems like
Mr.
most of your
Purcell?
bids are fairly tight. And within budget.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. I would report since the August meeting, we awarded approximately $871,000 in engineering design, and then also construction fees of just short of $4.8 million of projects were awarded.
Is that, Brian, does that coincide with what we've done in the past? How does it relate to?
Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. This is the first time I really looked at it.
Thank you for the report. I don't think we need a motion on any of these, or just.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
So, thank you. We will then continue to go to discussion, if there is any.
Mr. Chairman, we wanted to bring you up to date on several items. The first one being the Goshen Irrigation District tunnel collapse. Then Brian's going to give you a quick update, as you requested, Mr. Chairman, from the last meeting on the Gillette funding and current budget situation. And then just a real short discussion about a preview of the November meeting and kind of the applications and the different account funds that are available and what to expect there. So anyway, I'll get started real quick here on Goshen. And there's a lot of moving parts to this, so I'm going to refer to my notes. I apologize to that, but my memory is not that great. So they got their temporary fix up and running and water running through the tunnel and the canal near the end of August, and they've been running water for about 35, 36 days. I think they just shut off yesterday. The information I received from Sean Booth with the Goshen Irrigation District was that little bit of water, the 35, 36 days, amounted to somewhere to around $50 million worth of benefits with finishing off corn and getting another cutting of hay. So it was very valuable to try to get it up and running this fall yet, and they did. The estimated total that's been spent on the temporary emergency fix right now is $3 million, and they're still getting in invoices from SAK. That's the contractor that helped them get the tunnel back open. They did receive a loan from the Bureau of Reclamation in the amount of $4 million. It was, I think, a 3.125% interest rate, I believe, for 30 years. Don't quote me on that. And part of that loan, 35% of that is non-repayable, or basically like principal forgiveness. So that's where they sat with the Bureau, 35% of the $4 million. And like I said, they've only spent $3 million to date, but they've got some bills coming in. So if you recall, they, as in the Goshen Irrigation District, had submitted an application to the Mineral Royalties Grant through State Land Investment Board. And that was tabled back in August because of the definition of special districts, and the Attorney General got involved to determine if an irrigation district was part of a special district. They had a SLIB board, State Land Investment Board, meeting yesterday. They untabled that. They discussed it, and based on, again, the Attorney General's opinion, they were not eligible, so they denied them on that. But in the meantime, they also, after discussing this with the State Land Investment Board and the office that handles the Drinking Water SRF and Clean Water SRF and MRG, they applied for a Clean Water SRF grant, any amount of $4 million, and they had that discussion yesterday and were approved for that. So what that entails is it's a 2.5% interest rate for 30 years, and it has 75% principal forgiveness. So if we look at, roughly they've spent $3 million, they've got the $4 million grant, or I shouldn't say loan, from the Bureau of Reclamation. 35% of that is basically forgiven, or kind of like grant. And now they've got the Clean Water SRF, and 75% forgiveness, also a $4 million loan. So it would appear that with the additional work that needs to be done, I'll get to that in a second, on the temporary fix, they ought to be able to get that pretty much done with little to no money out of pocket. So that's good news. In this last month or month and a half, both Goshen Irrigation District and Fort Laramie, Gearing Fort Laramie, which is the Nebraska side of that, have entered into an agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation to go through basically an alternatives analysis study. They sat down sometime in early September, I believe, and brainstormed all the potential permanent fixes for all the tunnels, Tunnel 1, 2, and 3. I think they looked at, I've heard varying numbers, but 19 different alternatives. They landed on kind of 10, and some of those alternatives weren't standalone alternatives, like it was adding epoxy to increase the capacity of the tunnel, and that was kind of an add-on alternative. But they landed on roughly 10 that seemed, actually feasible. And they went into the agreement they had with the Bureau was for a $64,000 contract to do this alternatives analysis. A portion of that was paid for or obligation of Nebraska because Tunnel 3 is solely owned by Nebraska. Tunnel 1s and 2 are 49% Wyoming, 51% Nebraska, and that's based on acreage that they serve. In the alternatives analysis or study that the Bureau, I believe that's the tech center down in Denver, did, they looked at relative costs, pros and cons of each alternative, timelines associated with alternatives, and they sat down last week with the districts to explain kind of what they came up with. And then this week they provided them with some kind of a hard copy report of what they had looked at. From my discussion with Goshen Irrigation District and the Bureau, it sounds like they're leaning towards or trying to decide on two different options. One would be grouting Tunnel 1s and 2, and what that would consist of is, as it was explained to me, over the years, what used to be sandstone bedrock that they've cut these tunnels through has weathered, and it's basically turned into sand, so you don't have the binding particles with the sand anymore. So the grouting alternative is a two-step process. They inject some kind of a chemical that basically binds those sand particles back together and turns it into more of a bedrock sandstone again. And then they go back and they grout the fractures and voids and everything to a minimum of 10 feet out from the perimeter of the tunnel. So that would, if the tunnel's this, it's 10 feet outside of that in all directions, the roof, the floor, the sidewalls and everything. And Bureau apparently has done this on a lot of different tunnels and worked with a lot of districts on it. They're very confident in this fix and that'll last a long time. The second option that the districts are trying to decide on are basically open cutting tunnel number 2 so they don't ever have to worry about it collapsing again. I don't think they're looking at that for tunnel number 1. I think that was more the grouting, but focusing on tunnel number 2, open cut. And I believe it was rough numbers were 2.5 million cubic yards of material that would have to be moved. And according to the Bureau, they were providing relative costs, as in what's this one cost compared to this one. And the open cut was roughly 30+% more than what the grouting option would be. So it is more expensive, but you do get the long-term, security of an open cut. And security was a big concern, of the districts and cost and so on and so forth. So the Bureau also provided the districts with a list of consultants and contractors that are familiar with doing these types of work. So they would have that. And now the district is going back out to these firms to get basically a real world cost estimate from them. Because and without throwing out numbers that will then become numbers that everybody thinks is going to happen, they had basically their grouting expert out on site from Denver who provided them some numbers, and then they took, say, like the grouting and the open cut to their estimating group in Denver. They have a group for nuts and bolts and estimating and everything you can think of. There's a group for it. And they came up with significantly higher numbers than the expert grouter from the Bureau. So there's some disagreement on what it would cost. So as is good practice, they're now going back out to folks that actually do it on the ground and design it to determine what's it's actually going to cost. And they're doing that currently. Their plan then is to meet with, at least Goshen Irrigation District is going to have a landowner meeting in Torrington on October 22nd to provide all their users information and get their feedback. Gearing Fort Laramie is having just a board meeting at this point on October 8th, so next week, to receive the written report from the Bureau. And the Bureau is under the assumption that the two districts can come to an agreement on what the permanent fix is going to be. We'll see how that plays out. Considering the costs of the two options, there's disagreement amongst Goshen Irrigation District at this point. So we'll see how that shakes out. So then let's talk about the permanent fix and funding the permanent fix. We had a discussion with, again, state lands, and it would appear that they would also be eligible for the Clean Water SRF program for the permanent fix. The way it sits right now is that program has $1.5 million left over in principal forgiveness. So let's say it's, what would that be? $6 million, or whatever. Yeah, that's right, $6 million. So if they asked for a $6 million, that's not a good option, good example. Anyway, sorry, I'm thinking as I'm speaking here. They've got $1.5 million left in principal forgiveness. Next summer, late next summer, they'll get their next capitalization grant from the EPA and refill their coffers and have an additional $3 to $4 million in principal forgiveness at that point. So, and whatever is not used in principal forgiveness this year through the program rolls over into next year and just gets added to next year's principal forgiveness.
Just a quick question on that, Jason, if I can interrupt. What is the percentage of the principal forgiveness?
The way their temporary
What's the
emergency fix
calculation?
was, they gave 75% principal forgiveness.
Wow.
So the district's only on the hook for 25%. And of that, you've already got the 35% forgiveness from the Bureau, so they shouldn't really have any out-of-pocket expense or little.
So what about the reimbursables? The money that they spent now, does the loans and the grants quantify to repay the district for what they've put out of pocket?
Yes.
Thank you.
It can be reimbursed through the Clean Water SRF program, stuff that's already occurred. So that's good.
Can I follow up? On the principal forgiveness, can you just spend the principal forgiveness and leave the loan in place, or is it like we do? For every $4 you spend, 3's grant and 1's loan.
I would assume that that's the case.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, state lands kind of provided them a roadmap of what they thought would be the best opportunity for the district to get the most principal forgiveness from them. And they suggested that they come in for their next meeting, which is in February of next year. The deadline to have information and applications in is, I believe, November of this year, and ask for design funding. Because if you recall at our last meeting, we talked about, let's go do a feasibility study, make sure we've looked at all the alternatives, come up with a good cost estimate to then to go to level 3 next year. Well, I think with what the Bureau's been working on, I think we've looked at all the alternatives at least, and the districts are right now looking for those good cost estimates. So I think we're to that point where we're ready, and the Bureau believes this is the case too, at least the Mills office that works directly with Goshen Irrigation District, that they probably aren't going to need to go back and do value engineering, and that's, again, more alternatives analysis and things like that, that they could probably just move straight into the design. And the district, I believe, is leaning towards hiring the Bureau of Reclamation to complete that design, but that's an option they have. Hire them or go hire a private consultant. And then I think the Bureau would prefer that the district then procure a contractor or bid out the project because the Bureau's process is a little extended and the districts could get it done a lot quicker. So then we get into, okay, if they pick the grouting option, according to the Bureau, they think they could get that done in 4 to 5 months. So they could, and the design on that's pretty simple. So they think if they wanted to move as quick as possible, they could possibly do that this winter. If they go the open cut route, we're talking 2 to 3 seasons, and I have not seen the report yet, but they feel like they can complete that while still running water, providing water to their users, and do the open cut in phases, I guess. But it would be on the same alignment as the existing tunnel and Tunnel 2. So, and the Bureau is going to help them out with the NEPA. If we go the grouting route, the NEPA is a categorical exclusion, slam dunk. If we go the open cut route, it's probably, they're hoping an environmental assessment, depending on feedback and public comments. It could go EIS, but they're hoping it would be an EA. And depending on the level of complexity, it sounded like the Bureau would be willing to pick up the tab. I don't want to promise anything there, but that's been discussion so far on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Basically, you're saying you could still operate the tunnel while removing the overburden in the tunnel itself with equipment, and over a 100-year-old tunnel, you're going to put that kind of load on it?
Mr. Chairman, like I said, I have not seen the report and the analysis, so I don't know exactly what their plan would be to open cut that.
Thank you.
So that leads us to, I guess, how is our program going to be involved? And when we had the discussion, this was yesterday, so this is hot off the press, at the governor's office, there is some work, I missed this part. So if they decide, okay, let's go do the design and get a better feel for what the costs are and take this a little slower, run water through the temporary fix next year and then wait till the following year to do anything, either grouting or start the open cut, then the Bureau wants them to do some risk mitigation work because basically I think they went up on Tunnel 2, they fixed everything up to the collapse and the inlet, and the Bureau sees some things that probably need to be worked on the outlet, and then some select ribbing and grouting downstream of where the collapse was in Tunnel 2. They had to do that before they turned on this year for Tunnel 1. They had to go in there and kind of do that risk management. So Tunnel 1 should be in good shape, but need to be a little bit more work done in Tunnel 2 to just run on the temporary fix next year. And we think in discussions with state lands that would be eligible for this emergency clean water grant that could fall under that. They've only spent $3 million so far. They've got the $4 million grant. They're going to be talking to the Bureau to see if that can be covered under their grant or their loan. I keep saying grant, I mean loan. Under the Bureau loan with the 35% principal forgiveness. So we're hoping we can get through that. So if they just go into design, ask for design, then they're probably going to have 75% principal forgiveness on the design from the state lands. They're somewhat reluctant, and I'll skip forward here for a second. We've got applications for construction projects in Account 2 sitting in our office right now that I've not completely reviewed of approximately $21 million. And if you recall, we have $15.6 million to spend over the next 2 years in Account 2. So that's about 7.8 to spend. We did transfer the $7 million from Buffalo Bill account to Account 2. So if you said we're just going to use that all for Account 2 and not think of it for a potential emergency fund, I don't know where that'll go, then we've got roughly $15 million in Account 2 to spend this year, and we've got $21+ million worth of projects to consider without Goshen Irrigation District in that $21 million at this point. So with that said, they realize that they've got that same information. They've been coming to our program for a number of years, and they don't want to look like the fat pig at the trough, I guess, taking all the money, knowing they're going to get money from state lands now. I said, well, we understand your situation. You know, I don't think that'll give you a black eye in our program. So they're debating on, do they want to come to us at all? I don't know. And it's really going to depend on, do they go the grouting route or do they go the tunnel route? And I said, if when they come to us with a plan, we want to know if they go the tunnel route, why did they go that route? Because if we would have done a feasibility study and came up with those two options, everything being equal, one's 30 or 40% more costly, then we want to make sure it pencils out economically and benefits-wise to justify moving forward with the more expensive option as opposed to the cheaper option. So they understand that. So the other challenge here is going to be here in the next couple weeks. Our office is going to be doing a lot of work on the applications we currently have. We don't have an application from them. So how do we consider what their potential application is going to look like along with the $21 million of applications we already have? So it may be last minute when they show up, if they show up at all, but I'll continue the discussions with them and try to stay up to speed as quickly as they're moving. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Purcell?
Director, I don't think you do worry about what they're going to come up with. I think you go about your business. Their indications are they're not going to apply. And at least in your preliminary recommendations, do what you think you need to do with what we've got. And then if the application comes in, we'll maybe have to adapt, but I'd hate to see us with all the money the limited money we have, to stop some projects that are ready to go now. And so just as one commissioner, I think you go about business as usual. You look at the applications you have on your table.
I did mention to them in regards to design work, if they were to come to our program for design, that they could probably ask for, a 67 or 75, 67-33 or 75-25 on what was left over from the state land loan or forgiveness / grant. So they are aware of that. So we'll kind of see what happens. Also in the works, Senator Steinmetz was involved in all those discussions and is aware of the situation, and the legislature has their eyes on this. So they're also thinking, how can we help GID, and is that in the form of a direct appropriation? Is that in the form of moving money around in water development accounts, or what is it? So at our next meeting, we'll know hopefully what direction the districts are going to go, and we'll be able to figure out how we're going to fund it. But a lot of balls in the air, but the overall picture is a lot better than it was last time we talked in August in regards to the temporary fix and the permanent fix and all that stuff. So with that, are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On how is SLIB collateral on the loans? Obviously, they don't own the tunnels. Is that going to be an issue in all this?
Mr. Chairman, I believe they went through that analysis. I don't know exactly what that analysis looks like, but I think they look at their existing debt and loan payments, and I don't know how they determine their ability to pay, but they had loan documents ready for the district to sign yesterday at our meeting, so they obviously passed that test.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Lancaster, you had a question too, or comment?
Question. Jason, when they excavated at Tunnel 2 and then used that excavation for embankment, it held up well?
They
And
piled it.
it what?
They piled it. It's not,
They didn't, they had some of the embankment wash out, right,
that was downstream or upstream from there.
when it backed up? So they didn't use any of this new excavation for embankment, they just stockpiled it, okay. Just wanted to know of its structure integrity.
Mr. Chairman, I believe they had to increase the freeboard a little bit on the canal. So the sides of it had to go up a little bit higher than before. It sounded like the capacity was a little bit affected, but it wasn't from the tunnel. It was more from vegetation growing up in the canals during the fix that affected the capacity. It seemed like the tunnel ran plenty of water to get what they had before. And that was another point that some of the GID members were talking about in regards to the benefit of an open cut versus the tunnel, is they could get another 100 CFS and give everybody more water per acre. And that went a long ways. And I guess people feel like their property values have been quite affected by this, considering they've got tunnels up above them. And if they were to open cut that relieves some of that worry into the future, and their property values might recover better with an open cut versus a tunnel fix. And so they're really thinking about it.
Follow-up. So Commissioner Purcell, you asked the question of how they excavate this tunnel while the water's running through that. And if you buy Larry and I dinner, we'll show you how that's done. We can do that. We won't bid on it, though. It's not a
I'll
cost.
certainly look forward to that.
All right. So if there's no more questions, Mr. Chairman, we'll
Good
move
job.
to Gillette and start talking
Good
Gillette.
job, Jason. It looks like you have it under your hat. You know all about it, and great report. Okay?
Okay, so give us just a second here. We're going to get something up on the screen for Gillette. Mr. Chairman, real quick, Barry just pointed out to me that $7 million that we talked about at our last meeting, of course, needs to be approved by the legislature before that goes into effect and being redirected to account 2. So that's not a done deal until the legislature says it's a done deal, just so you know. So at this point, we really have 7.8 roughly $1 million if we want to split it up between 2 years out of account 2.
Thank you, Jason.
As Jason indicated, at the last meeting in Buffalo, there was a request to get an update on the Gillette Madison pipeline project. And so we're going to go over, some of the commission members are not familiar with the project, so I'll do a quick project overview. This project has been in existence since 2009, and actually it stemmed from a previous project that was discontinued, but Commissioner Purcell was heavily involved in the early stages of this particular project. And then I'll go into the outstanding work that still needs to be done on the project, and then I'll finalize, talk about the project budget, our expenditures to date, as well as what we anticipate the budget to be remaining at the end of the project. So this particular project it's a regional water project. It's going to serve the city of Gillette as well as 45 districts near the city of Gillette. So as I indicated earlier, in 2009, the legislature approved the first appropriation for the project. In that same year, the city of Gillette hired Burns & McDonald as the engineer for the project. The first project construction was awarded in the spring of 2011, and this was a project that was awarded to Hot Iron. It was Highway 50. It was a pipeline project. But also in the fall of 2011, the city of Gillette awarded the first 2 well projects, and that was M11 and M12. And the contractor was Lane Resources out of Colorado. So a little bit about the wells. These are Madison Formation wells. There's a total of 5 wells involved in the project. They're located about 14 miles north of Moorcroft, just off of Highway 14. For the commission members that did the summer tour last year, that we visited that site. These are extremely deep wells. They're approximately 3,000 feet deep. The target yield on these wells are 1,400 gallons a minute. Again, that's high production wells. The wells to reach the target yields were acidized, and so the contractor pumped down over 50,000 gallons of 15% hydrochloric acid solution under high pressure. It had to be 1,200 PSI greater than the hydrostatic pressure of the well. After that water was, the solution was pumped into the well, it sat for a period of time, then it was pumped out. So the volume of water that was pumped out was twice the volume of solution that was pumped into the well. And then that water was stored in frac tanks on site and then hauled off and disposed of in injection wells that were permitted. It was permitted through the state. The project also involves transmission pipelines, approximately 65 miles of pipeline, most of that of which is 45 miles is 42-inch steel. There's approximately 7 miles of 24 and 30-inch. We have 6 miles of 14-inch, which is the well field, and approximately 8 miles of 18-inch. And the 18-inch is connecting, we have 2 water supply sources for the city of Gillette. There's this project, which is, it actually parallels, the transmission pipeline parallels an existing pipeline, it's a 30-inch pipeline. The well field that the new well field that we're constructing, the Madison well field, is adjacent to an existing Madison well field. Our well field will have an ultimate capacity of 16,800 gallons per minute. And again, for the 5 wells that we're currently designing and constructing, it's 7,000 gallons for the near term. And then long term, they can add additional wells and again, increase the capacity up to 16,800 gallons a minute. The existing well field can produce about 8,500 gallons a minute. And again, they just parallel down Highway 14 and they get down to I-90, turn west and head to Gillette. This project also involves a disinfection facility. This is at the Pine Ridge. It's just west of south of the well field and just west of Carlisle. It also involves a pump station. The pump station's at Rosette, and again, there's another pump station for the existing 30-inch pipeline there. Topographically, you're coming off a hill from the Pine Ridge. Topographically drops down, then goes up to Gillette. So to get that water up to Gillette, we have to pump it. And so again, that pump station is rated at 16,800 gallons a minute. It's a very large pump station. Yes, sir.
Quickly, I couldn't write the numbers down. What's the yield of the 5 wells that we've drilled?
Total is 7,000.
7,000 per minute?
Yeah, 7,000 gallons.
Correct.
Thank you.
So this project is approximately 90 to 95% complete, but we've had some issues along the way. And as the commissioners that took the tour last year are aware, in 2017, we had actually 2 contracts under construction for the well field. The first project was Lane, and they were drilling M13, 14, and 15. There's 5 wells, and 13, 14, 15 are the last 3 that were drilled. The first 2 that were drilled were test wells. That was M11 and M12. Those test wells ultimately became production wells. They proved to be successful. So as I indicated earlier, part of the work of drilling these wells, we acidized all of these wells, with the exception of 1 well has not been acidized, that's M14. Also, as part of the contract for Lane, they pump test these wells to get, they want to know what the ultimate yield is of these wells, as well as they take that information and use it to size the pumping equipment. So in summer 2017, we had these 3 wells were being constructed. We had 2 of the wells were acidized, M13 and M15 was completed. M14 has not been acidized, it's still on hold. And we still have the pump test. The other contract that we had in 2017 was the construction of the wellfield transmission pipeline. So that's approximately 6 miles of 14-inch HDPE pipe. It also included the construction of the M11 and M12 well houses, and those well houses included the permanent pumping equipment. And again, those were previously acidized and pump tested under a previous contract, and again, that was the 2011 contract that I talked about earlier. So in August of 2017, DEQ was receiving concerns from ranchers regarding low pH water, as well as some of the adjacent wells, these ranchers' wells going dry. Normal pH values run between 6 and 8 for groundwater. Measured pH values out in these ranchers' wells were below 4 in some cases, so a significant reduction of the pH. with regard to the ranchers' wells that were going dry, there's two formations that most of these ranchers tap into for their water. The first is the Lakota. It's at the top of that formation is about 100 feet below ground level, and the total depth is about 300 feet. The other is the Sundance Formation. Its top of the formation is approximately 300 feet below ground level, and at the bottom of the formation is about 700 feet. So you look at the total formation depth that it's about 700 feet that they're pulling their water from. Again, our wells are about 3,000 feet. So in December of 2017, DEQ formed an executive committee and advisory groups to take a look at the pH issues. They also wanted to take a look at the well integrity, and this would be the cement bond between the outside of the casing and the borehole. And so all of the wells are cement bonded from the bottom all the way up to the top. So as part of that study investigation, Bern Hinckley out of Laramie was hired to oversee the data review and also to put together the final reports. Bern Hinckley also hired Crowder Consulting. Bob Crowder he's an expert on bond logs and geophysical bond logs, and so as part of this effort to take a look at the bonds, Schlumberger was hired and brought in to perform bond logs on all 5 wells. And then Bob Crowder interpreted those bond logs and provided recommendations. So the well reports, the water quality report, part of that we took, DEQ spearheaded water quality samples. They took 60 samples within a radius of a few miles within those wells. The report was released on July 2nd this year, and with the fingerprint of the acid turned out to be a sulfuric acid, and not the hydrochloric acid that was used to acid frack the wells. So the report indicates that the source of that sulfuric acid is from iron pyrite coming in contact with oxygenated water, so it's oxidizing the iron pyrite to sulfuric acid. The report goes on to indicate that the oxygenated water, it could either be coming from just long-term recharge, it could be just natural and/or pumping fluctuations in the groundwater table, or it could be the pump test discharge from the City Madison wells that we did under M11 and M12. Those wells were tested at 1,400 gallons a minute and for extended period of time, so there was a lot of water that was put on the ground during the pump testing of M11 and M12. And again, we have not pump tested M13, 14, or 15 at this point. So currently, the city is waiting for DEQ to approve the M13, 14, 15, the well drilling project to move forward. And again, we still need to acidize 14 and then again do the pump testing. So that kind of brings us up to date where we are. The next slide, it's kind of hard to read. This is a summary of the outstanding work, and so what you can see here is the contract 2A. That's the project we just discussed. This is the M13, 14, and 15. And again, what we're waiting for is to acidize M14 and then do the pump testing on the M13, 14, 15. The pump test information that will be used under this project will be used to design the pumps and pump equipment under contract 2C. That project is anticipated to go to bid in 2020 with the caveat that I was just informed yesterday that the pumps that are required to do the pump testing under contract 2A are 8 to 12 months out. So it could delay the bidding and design of the M13, 14, 15 pumps under contract 2C. The next project is contract 2B. This is the completion of the M11 and M12 tying them into the transmission pipelines in the well field. That project is actually, and I've estimated here the estimated cost to complete. So go back to contract 2A. We're estimating the cost to complete that project at $2 million. Contract 2B, we're at substantial completion, or we're really close to wrapping that project up. Estimated cost is approximately $500,000. We talked about contract 2C. This is again the design and to install the pumping equipment and well houses. Connection to the well field, the pipelines that were constructed under the contract 2A, they run right up to the well houses, to the pad. So it's probably a matter of 50 to 100 feet of piping to make this connection, so it's really close. Estimated cost of that particular project is $6 million to complete. The last estimated outstanding work is just the engineering. They still have to design the contract 2C. There's construction management left with all three, contract 2A, 2B, 2C. We have record drawings to complete, O&M manuals to complete, as well as just the project closeout. And there we're estimating the cost at $1.5 million to close the project out. So you can see here at the bottom here, our estimated cost to complete the project is approximately $10 million. This is a 67% grant. So we're estimating that we'll use $6.7 million of grant funds to complete the project. This last slide provides a project budget, expenditures, anticipated cost to complete the project. So the first one is the project budget. We have a state grant in the amount of a little over $145 million. The state loan is $44,328,000 and some change. That loan it's all been expended. That was probably 2.5 years ago. We expended the full amount. The city of Gillette, they've contributed a little over $27 million to the project. And that's through their capital facilities tax that was passed in 2011. And they had $110 million that they collected for the capital facilities tax to pay for this project. That $110 million not only will contribute to the what this portion, their 33% that they're currently now paying on the project for their matching fund, but it also repay back the loan. So our expenditures to date, the state grant, we spent a little over $119 million. State loan, again, we maximized the funding that was provided. We spent all that. And then the city of Gillette has expended a little over $14 million. So you can see here the total expenditures to date, $177 million and some change. Anticipated expenditures to complete the project, this just comes from the previous slide, is $10 million. And again, our portion will be $6.7 million. City of Gillette will contribute their 33% or $3.3 million to complete the project. Anticipated final completion budgets, you can see the state grant, what we anticipate. Based on our projections, we'll have approximately $20 million left in grant funds. And then the city of Gillette will have a little over $9 million available to them from their capital facilities tax. So this project is not complete. I know at the last meeting in Buffalo, Senator Hicks was under the impression that it was complete. We still got a ways to go. The city of Gillette has requested a 2-year time extension that we presented to the commission at the November meeting. I'm a little concerned that maybe not enough time from the standpoint if they don't get their pumps in 12 months, that means they can't start the design until they get the pumping equipment mobilized, set up, get the pumping results, then they have to do the design, then they have to go to construction. But I've broached that concern with the city of Gillette, and they're sticking with the 2 years. And that the reversion would be, right now the reversion's July 1st of 2020. So with their extension request, the reversion date would be July 1st of 2022.
And what that reversion amount would be?
Yeah.
What is the anticipated reversion amount?
Again, this is our best guess at this point. For the grant funds, and then
Brian, those funds go back to the state of Wyoming, the reversion, the 22 million anticipated.
exactly.
Okay.
So those accounts, again, we have different accounts, as Mr. Purcell's aware of. And so they'll go back again. The legislature, these aren't from account 1, 2, 3 that we normally, these are specially, the legislature appropriated this money from several accounts. There's a First Reserve and General Fund, a number of accounts that would originate from these funds.
Dollars that they couldn't transfer over to the Wyoming Water Development.
Decision.
I think we should request that as a board, maybe, that could happen.
We're showing, again, this $20 million. We still have projects.
Still got a long way to go.
We still got a ways to go.
Yeah, you do. With that, is there any other questions?
That was my question.
Thanks, Brian, appreciate it. There was one other tail end on this Gillette Water project, and was it Kevin? Are you in charge of the study that we have going up for the residents?
Not that Brian left it out, but we began Crook County Level 2 this summer.
That's right. Do you have a quick review or report on what has happened so far?
We did hire a consultant, Dowell, out of Sheridan. We have begun.
Can you use the mic? Thanks.
I'll just talk loud enough. We've begun the study, and the study involves, a look at the geology and water use in this area that's centered on the well field, basically. So we're going out in a 4-mile radius, looking at existing wells in the area. We're going to go back and test or sample some of the wells that DEQ did in their study, and also take in some of the wells that weren't included in the study to get better baseline water quality information. Then we're also going to look at the possibility of a rural water supply for these users out there that either have deficient wells or want to retire their own wells or don't have wells that may want to form a district or districts and build a rural water system out there. So we'll be looking at the feasibility of that, the engineering feasibility of that, based on either a source from the Gillette well field or a dedicated source or sources. So we have begun, actually Ben's here. Ben's our hydrogeologic consultant on that, and he has begun some of the sampling on these wells and has created a tabulation of all these wells, and is going to be working on that pretty darn soon before the snow gets too deep.
Is there any anticipation on, any speculation on participation? Do you have an idea?
Well, we had 2 public meetings. Okay, we had a public meeting at the Carlisle Fire Hall about a little over a month ago, and we had pretty good participation. And at that, and then we had a follow-up meeting for anybody who missed that meeting. Okay, so it was basically to provide information on the study, and also to invite folks to sample or resample wells. And Ben, how many wells do you think we're going to be able to sample total?
We had a total of a total of 79 respondents, property owners and such within the area. And of those, there's about 102 water wells and springs that have been requested that be sampled.
These are all in Crook County?
Yes, they're all over in that western central portion of Crook County, south of the tower.
By the way, it includes the town of Pine Haven.
You're in on that?
Conflict.
Yeah, and even my residents. Well, anyway, I know that, I think they got a good turnout on the opportunity to allow you guys on there, so that's good news. And I think we got a good report coming back from what I hear, so that's good. Any other comment with that?
Oh, and the results of that report will be out next year, so.
Good, thank you, Kevin.
Mr. Chairman, I kind of already mentioned the status of our accounts and what we have for applications at this point, so I won't get repetitive.
Chairman, I do need a clarification.
Okay.
What do we have in account two without the 7 million, or the transfer?
For the next 2 years, we've got about 15.6 million.
Requesting a transfer of
7
22.
for 2 years. This
Difference would be 1111.
11, yeah. Originally, I was thinking we could move some of that money if we were to create an emergency account. From the last meeting, it sounded like maybe we just set up the capability for us to use money in an emergency situation, and then the office would decide which accounts it came from. So it'd be nice to leave some of that there for emergencies, rather than raiding some of our other accounts that we're already short on, in particular account 3.
Chairman,
But
my guidance would be on the emergency account. Let's go about our business. And if they decide to do an emergency account,
Make it come out of general fund.
let them come up with the alternative funds. And the more funds we have earmarked, the less funds they have to take for an emergency account. I have no problem with an emergency account. But to the point that we're strapped, we're spending all our money for our dedicated purposes. I understand it's got to be in the back of your head, but in your recommendations, don't say, well, we've got 5 million for emergency account, because they're going to take to that like a pig on slop. And so do what you need to do, and let the legislature decide if in their good judgment they need an emergency account. Show us the money. We'll be happy to administer it if they wish. But the reality of it is, we have directed responsibilities at this point in time. And in fact, second-guessing a GID fund or an emergency fund, we'll leave that to their finer minds in March. But we got to go about our business as directed by statute, and I think that's the best approach.
I would agree with that, and here's why. I think the Gillette and Madison funds that are coming back, now I don't think they're going to be back in next year or the year after, but those funds that are coming back may be the best if legislature would tag those, or some of those, up to a certain number, because that's funds that's already been allocated, that is going to be returned, and if they want to bring it over here for an emergency, we could allow that, or I suppose it would work. But maybe that's the best way to address this. And that way, it doesn't create a budget-bearing factor on any of the work that we anticipate doing, and we carry on the way it is.
Well,
But-
we also
Yes, Gerald?
have to get the 30 million back that they said they borrowed from us the last 2 years. I mean, that's our money that they said they're borrowing it, and we're going to pay it back to us. So we need to put some amendments in to start getting some of that out of general fund to come back. This is the third time they've stole money out of water development, which is earmarked for water development, and borrowed it to fund the state engineer's office and just put it in general fund.
Are we charging interest?
Well, we're lucky to get that.
Chairman,
Yes,
I
Rod.
would concur with that $6 million a year that we're spending on the state engineer's office ought to come back to us, and if we need an emergency fund, that money be able to be used for that. That seems like to be the most direct line of sight funding that we have.
And it doesn't affect what we're doing today. And that's a big thing, I think, for us to change our budgetary criteria could be a challenge for us.
That 30 million should come back, and we put it back in the 3 accounts, or
Do we want to write a letter to that effect?
I would.
Mr. Chairman, I believe a good portion of the funding that was taken from account 3 for Gillette has been reimbursed to us. And then several years ago, when they were trying to balance the budget, they held on to 10 million. So don't quote me on this, but I think we're owed 10 million in account 3. But you're right, the 13.5 or so million, 6.5 million a year that funds the Board of Control is an annual thing. So.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that our director works at the pleasure of the governor. But I would hope that you're not under pressure in that avenue to come up with funds from water development. But if that becomes the case, I think we as a commission, it sounds like, would be very comfortable suggesting to him that if there is going to be emergency fund or GID relief, we would appreciate them looking at other funding sources. And if you need that letter, I'm sure we could get it written.
Chairman, I fully expect the Select Water Committee to have on their agenda for the November meeting or the workshop, meeting after our workshop, kind of like we did in August, an emergency fund discussion. So be prepared, if you would, with all your thoughts.
Mr. Director, I think you're seeing that we're pretty much in consensus that we paid our dues to society. Let us get about our business.
Mr. Chairman, I do like the idea if we are going to come up with one of those, an emergency fund, that the office have some say in where the funding comes from, rather than just saying it's going to come from this account or this account. Because we're in a good position to do that, knowing what projects we're working on and where there might be available funding.
Let them smack the gavel down that it's water development funds, and then I'm sure we have enough poop here enough clout to suggest to them, if they do decide to take money, where to take it.
Agree with
They got to
that.
decide to take it first.
Yeah, we got to wait for the handout. Is there any other, Jason, do you have any more information?
Mr. Chairman, the Wyoming Water Association, I believe, is in Casper this year, and that emergency fund discussion is a topic on their agenda. And I don't recall, besides Senator Driscoll, that's one of the presenters on that topic. I think there were two others.
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, it'll be Carly Ronka from the Bureau of Reclamation. Bob Mailing's going to be there as a GID board member, and he's bringing some other people with him as well. And then Senator Driscoll will be on that panel as well. So I would encourage you guys to be there and listen to that discussion and maybe have some input as to what could be potentially some future legislation.
A question, what would the Bureau have to do with this inaction?
Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming that the discussion's revolving around the tunnel collapse. As far as Carly goes, Carly Ronka, she's the Mills Area Office Manager. But it could, I'm assuming, the discussion could expand when we get to Senator Driscoll based on our discussion at the August meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
I don't know for sure.
Yes,
I'm a speaker at the banquet
that day.
and following evening, so I can express the views I've heard today, even though I will say I'm not necessarily representing the commission, but perhaps express to them we have work to do, and we're going to go about that work for the next biennium with the assumption that our funds remain intact. And so I will at least the best I can with some political oblop suggest to them to keep your hands off our money.
Mr. Chairman, just to wrap up the budget discussion real quick. So we'll do the best we can. We'll look and see what we can phase potentially, kind of like we did Wheatland Tunnel Dam. We did the design in one phase and then the construction the second year. And it's in its second year. So that's part of that 21 million. They're ready for construction now. So that's one of those projects we need to fund. Make sure everything meets our criteria, prioritize the best we can. I would like to point out we've got two planning projects that we just went through 6 different interviews on. That's Owl Creek, Lucerne and the Highland Hanover pump, and according to our criteria, construction is a higher priority than planning. So I'm going to do my best to try to keep those in there, because to get to good construction projects, we have to have planning. But if we were just to strictly stick to the criteria, those would probably fall out, and we just did, $60,000 or $100,000 worth of interviews for nothing, because we wouldn't be able to fund those through the legislature this year from account 2. So keep that in mind.
Chairman, I certainly hope that's not the case, that we could phase some construction or do something to make up any shortfalls.
We will have, and again, this is assuming all the applications we have meet our criteria and are eligible for funding, but in account 1, I believe, just roughly initially, we have $25.5 million of applications, and we have around 28.5, if I remember right, for 1 year, 56 million for 2 years, 57 million. So we might have $2 or $3 million in account 1 if we feel like there's some projects here that normally would be in account 2 that we might be able to, with a straight face, shoehorn into account 1, or I don't know if we can move account 1 money into account 2, but we'll try to think outside the box here and see what we can do. But anyway, that's all I have on that. And then the last item I have, so periodically we get notified from Downtown Mothership that we've got employees here at the office that have, been providing us service for a number of years, whether it be 5 years or 10 years or what have you. So we just received one of these the other day. So I want to recognize, and they get a certificate and then a pin. And so I want to recognize Barry Lawrence for 35 years of public service to the state of Wyoming.
Good job.
I hope we get a lot more out of him.
Barry's a true cowboy fan.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Jason. With that, we will go on to Katie and let her do a presentation on where we're going to be and how we're going to get there.
I just wanted to make sure that we did vote on the upcoming schedule. They do need to vote on that draft meeting schedule. The next meeting is in Casper, November 13th, 14th, and 15th, and we're meeting at Casper College campus. It's the Goodstein Foundation Library. I haven't been into that before, but at this point, I do have a block of rooms for the commissioners and staff at the Hampton Inn. So if you do not want those reservations, or if you do want them, please let me know as soon as possible.
I want mine handicapped.
Okay, great. And we will, I'll continue confirming those reservations, but
So, Mr. Chairman, under tab, if there's no questions for Katie on that.
Well, that college is hard to find unless you know Casper. I'll guarantee you, because I've been to meetings there and I end up in Kelly Well parking lot most of the time.
I'm going to drive you up there, Jerry.
You better take me too.
All right, I'll take you back.
So I'm gonna have a chauffeur pick me up at the Hampton Inn. and
Maybe we
take
ought to
me
get a
up.
van. Make sure we all show up when we need to show up.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, under tab XYZ is the schedule for the next year, I guess, starting January of this year. If you want to take a look at that and see if you see any conflicts that we need to change. Otherwise, we'll get a motion to accept that schedule.
I'm playing golf on all those days, so. I second.
Been moved and seconded, and I would like to give the board a few minutes to look at it, if you would. Just a couple of minutes, I know you did, because it could change. But anyway, if you don't see any conflict, we'll take a vote on it. Anybody, any comments on it? Where the meetings are? Do you have the tour
Yeah,
picked out too? Where is that gonna be?
I
And
don't know yet. We haven't
Yeah.
looked at the-
that hasn't been determined?
decide that in March.
Okay.
You decide that in March.
All right, with that, it's been moved by Commissioner Geis, seconded by Rod? Commissioner Wagner? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. The end. One more item. That,
Chairman,
Great
Sully.
great work. I'm proud of the bunch.
I move adjournment.
and is there a second? It's been
Second.
moved by Commissioner, seconded by,
Second.
you did it, Bill? Okay. Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Katie, I need the contracts.
I have one request. Would the commission mind a picture? I know we're minus Clinton Glick, but if we took a picture